Is a plant-based diet or a vegan diet best for pregnancy? Well, this is a question that I get asked all the time because I work with pretty much exclusively women who are trying to conceive and pregnant. And there is so much information out there and also a lot of misinformation about the best type of diet to follow when you're pregnant. I get a lot of women who come into our first session already having pared down their diet to one that's mostly plant-based, meaning they're excluding animal foods either entirely or they're minimizing them. And they want to know, is this actually a good thing? Or am I potentially missing out? And my answer to the question of whether a vegan or plant based diet is best for pregnancy is no. Women in your reproductive years, and especially women who are pregnant, are not going to be best served by a plant based or a vegan diet. And I want to go into why that is in this video today and really start to dispel some of the myths that I'm seeing out there, especially in the media and social media, about plant based diets during pregnancy. First of all, we evolved eating animals. Humans have been eating animal foods for literally hundreds of thousands of years. And in fact, including animal fats and proteins in our diets is one of the reasons that we are who we are today. So removing animal foods from our diets is a step back, evolutionarily speaking. Now, since the 1960s, when the food pyramid was first introduced in the US, people have been eating less and less animals and more grains and vegetable oils to replace those calories. And what has happened? Well, as you can probably notice, chronic disease rates have skyrocketed, obesity has increased significantly, people are for sure sicker, and for the current generation, meaning you and me, life expectancy is actually lower than for our parents' generation for the first time ever. So we already know that instructing people, especially women and children, to replace the animal foods in their diet with plant foods leads to poorer health outcomes and increased micronutrient deficiencies, which brings me to my next point. Animal foods are significantly more nutrient dense than plant foods, meaning you get more bang for your buck. And not only do animal foods contain higher levels of key micronutrients, meaning vitamins and minerals, they also provide these micronutrients in forms that are more bioavailable. And bioavailable means that your body can better absorb and use those vitamins and minerals. Now, that's really important when it comes to pregnancy because you already need higher levels of vitamins and minerals. Your body is going to shuttle some to your baby, and hopefully, there's enough left over to also provide some for you. But at the end of pregnancy, if you're going to be depleted because you're only absorbing, let's say, 5% of the iron that you're getting from your food, that's not great for you. You're not going to feel that good, but it can also pose some health risks. So let's take iron, for example. Now, if your iron levels are low going into birth, you're actually at an increased risk for postpartum hemorrhage. And in fact, if you're my client, I'm going to want to make sure that your ferritin or your stored iron is at a very specific minimum level to help dramatically reduce that risk. And then to also make sure that you don't become even further depleted while you're breastfeeding. So that's just one example of how having higher levels of micronutrients that are more bioavailable is more helpful during pregnancy. Now, one micronutrient that we often think of as being more abundant in plant foods is folate. And if you're pregnant or thinking about pregnancy, you probably already know how important folate is for baby's neural tube and spinal development. However, what most people don't know is that the food that's highest in folate is actually liver, and especially chicken liver. And eggs are another really great source of that nice bioavailable folate. So eggs and liver, I mean, these are great examples of foods that cover so many different micronutrient bases. Whereas if you're getting your folate from, let's say, spinach, that's not going to have a lot of the other key micronutrients that we need during pregnancy. So including more of these animal food sources in your diet, it allows you to not have to be so hyper-focused on needing to get like 35 different foods at the grocery and eat so many different combinations of things every day, because it's going to help you cover your bases in fewer foods. So just as an example, eggs and liver will also give you so much of the iron, the B12, the choline, the omega-3 fats, the fat-soluble vitamins like D, E, A, and K, just to name a few. Another thing that happens when we either stop eating animal foods or reduce the animal foods in our diet is that we end up eating a lot more carbohydrates. Now, I'm not trying to say that all vegans are just sitting around eating bread and pasta all day. Like, I know that's not true, although some definitely do. But if you think about it, an animal food like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, they're typically a protein paired with a fat. Now, the plant foods, even the plant proteins like beans, lentils, and soy, those are a protein paired with a carb. And so we end up getting less fats in our diet, more carbs in our diet. Now, those fats are really important for sex hormone production. So, when we're trying to conceive, when we're pregnant, we need those healthy fats. Those fats, of course, are also crucial for your baby's development, especially their brain and their organ development. And then the proteins that are in plant foods tend to be lower amounts of protein and less absorbable forms of protein, because unfortunately, those plant foods come with anti nutrients that are going to block the absorption of some of the protein and some of the micronutrients in those foods. Now, we actually need a decent amount of protein when we're pregnant. So, in the first half of pregnancy, we need 80 grams of protein per day. That's kind of a minimum. And in the second half of pregnancy, that increases to 100 grams of protein per day. And that's a lot easier to meet those protein requirements when we are including the really big sources of protein, which are going to be animal foods in the diet. Now, if you think about it, you're growing an entire organ from scratch during pregnancy. Of course, that's the placenta. That's the only time in human life that we grow an organ that we haven't already been born with. So, yes, that requires a lot of protein. And then, of course, we're also growing an entire human that has bones and skin and nails and organs and hair, all of these things that require enough protein. Another big benefit of animal foods is that they contain cholesterol. And cholesterol has been a dirty word in this country since about the time when the food pyramid was introduced, but it shouldn't be. That is all based on outdated and really seriously flawed pseudoscience that has been harming Americans ever since. Now, all of our sex hormones are steroid hormones, meaning they require cholesterol in order to be produced in the proper amounts, the proper levels. And this is really, really important, especially for women, because we are much more hormonally complicated than our male counterparts. And it's especially important for women who are trying to conceive and for women who are currently pregnant. In fact, cholesterol is so important that if we're not getting enough of it through our diets, our bodies will actually produce it in the liver. But I don't want your body to become so depleted that it has to rely on its own endogenous sources. Now, I often see sex hormone levels, especially progesterone, increasing in my women who are trying to conceive simply by including some quality animal fats in the diet. And of course, we need higher amounts of those sex hormones, especially estrogen and progesterone, to be fertile in the first place and then to have a healthy pregnancy. So, this is not something that should be ignored. It's important to note that there is zero cholesterol in any plant food. So even plant foods that contain some saturated fats, like coconut oil is a really great example, zero cholesterol. Of course, when we're talking about animal foods, quality matters. And I'm not saying that you should go get your animal protein and fat from Chick-fil-A. Like, no, please do not do that. I've actually had some clients who say, oh, great, I really like their popcorn chicken. And I'm just like, no, 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 that's not what we're talking about here. When we're talking about animals, at least in this country, the USA, we really need to be cognizant of the source. And that is because factory farmed, mass produced animals are not a health food. So what we need to be looking for is specific keywords. And of course, I dive super deep into this with all of my clients, but we want animals that are eating their natural diets. We want animals that were raised in a natural way, because those are going to have all of the levels of the micronutrients that your body needs. They're not going to have any of the added junk and stuff that I don't want you putting in your body. So the gist is a varied diet. Just like you probably don't want to go plant-based during pregnancy, you don't need to go carnivore and eat exclusively animals either, right? We want to include some key well sourced animal foods, ideally in our daily diets. And we also want to have plenty of healthy plant foods too. Now, if you're currently vegan, maybe that means we're having a conversation about if you're comfortable reintroducing something like eggs and quality whole milk dairy or goats or sheep's milk dairy back into your diet. If you are vegetarian, that's going to be a question of, do you feel comfortable maybe reintroducing wild caught fatty fish, maybe some grass fed beef or bison on occasion? It's about being a nutrient seeker, right? And I really like that term because it's not dogmatic. It's not based on like these labels of I eat this and I don't eat this. I think labels can be really dangerous, especially if you want to grow and evolve past that and then you feel stuck in this little box. But as you now have learned, the diet that is best for pregnancy does include foods that are highest in key important micronutrients. Of course, I work with women who are vegan and vegetarian all the time. And I never tell women that they have to stop being vegan or vegetarian because that's a personal choice. And listen, I was also vegan myself for an entire decade. So I understand that it is a lifestyle choice. I just don't want women to make that choice thinking that they're doing something beneficial for their health when it can actually have quite the opposite effect. So often there's an education component that comes into play when we work together. However, if that is your lifestyle and you don't want to change, that is perfectly okay. But in that case, you really do need to be working with a prenatal nutrition specialist to make sure that you're covering all of your macro and micronutrient bases through your diet, as well as targeted supplements.